26 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the order of reference of March 8, 2021, the committee is meeting to study Bill C-14, an act to implement certain provisions of the economic statement tabled in Parliament on November 30th, 2020, and other measures for the first 2 hours, and for the third hour, pursuant to the order of reference of February 3rd, 2021, the committee is meeting to study Bill C-208, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, transfer a small business or family farm or fishing corporation. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25, 2021, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, so you are aware the website will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. And I would remind folks that they're not supposed to take photos or screenshots off the proceeding. I will leave out a lot of the rest of the preliminaries, but a reminder that members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. And I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. I will not at this time go through the departmental witnesses, but welcome to Minister Freeland and officials from the Department of Finance and others. They will be here for the presentation with Minister Freeland as well. Before you start, Minister, we are going to be interrupted by votes. Your ears might have been burning before you sat in your chair because we're having a discussion to try and see how we can ensure that you're here for an hour. So I just don't know how this is going to complicate things, but maybe you could respond to that and go to your remarks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in your hands when it comes to how we handle the voting and my presence here. Up to you how to do that, and I will follow your lead, sir.
Okay. We will. I think we'll try and we'll need unanimous consent to do this once the bells ring, and we are under an obligation to hear the motion as well as a vote. So if somebody could give us we'll deal with that when the bells start to ring. I'll have to ask for unanimous consent. But what I would suggest is we continue to go till about 10 minutes before the vote. We have to click off the Zoom on another. Well, we got to. Yeah, if you want to get into the parliamentary Zoom, you'd have to click off and go on, and then back into this one. So that's what I'd suggest. Anyway, the floor is yours, Minister. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for the invitation to be with you virtually today. Accompanying me virtually again from the Department of Finance are Maud Lavoie, Dave Boulne, Trevor McGowan, Leslie Taylor, and Nicholas Morrow. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that today is a somber anniversary. It is 1 year since COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic by the WHO. On this National Day of Observance, I know that all of us honor the memories of all those who have lost their lives to this disease. And we have the deepest compassion, I know all of us in this committee, to their families and their loved ones. To the extraordinary Canadians who have been serving on the front lines in our country's fight against COVID-19, to personal support workers in long-term care facilities, to all of our healthcare workers, to the essential workers keeping food on our shelves, from cashiers to truck drivers. Let me just say thank you. I'm happy to be with you here, parliamentary colleagues, to talk about Bill C-14, which would implement several important and necessary measures from the Fall Economic Statement, which I tabled last November 30th. Pendant plus d'un an, les Canadiens font face à une crise sans.
For more than a year now, Canadians have been facing an unprecedented crisis, which continues today. However, spring is almost here, and better days await us. As long as we will have not controlled COVID, our government will do everything that is necessary as long as it is required to come to the assistance of Canadians and to help them overcome this crisis. Since the beginning of this pandemic, the Government of Canada has done everything in its power in order to take control over the virus and to reduce its economic consequences. To date, for each $10 spent in Canada to fight COVID-19 and to support Canadians, $8 have been spent by the federal government. In its fall economic statement, we presented a detailed plan to protect Canadians, jobs, and companies in Canada during the second wave of the pandemic. We are taking quick action in order to follow through on these commitments by supporting Canadian companies, as well as Canadian jobs and Canadian families. We are not only coming to the assistance of our communities to come through this difficult winter, but we're also preventing any economic scarring. Thanks to this support, we're able to see a complete economic recovery that is also sound once the virus will have been completely controlled. Bill C-14 is a vital element of our government's economic plan. It enables us to move forward with the urgent measures provided for in the economic statement to provide immediate assistance to families with young children, to students, and to companies. And it also provides for measures which will safeguard the health and safety of Canadians.
So when we debate Bill C-14, here is what is concretely hanging in the balance. The fall economic statement announced a new $1 billion safe long-term care fund to help provinces and territories protect seniors. Of this, Bill C-14 would provide $505.7 million immediately, while our need is most urgent, to support long-term care facilities over the coming months, to help prevent the spread of COVID-19, to help prevent outbreaks and deaths in supportive care facilities. In addition, we have proposed through this bill to provide up to $395.6 million to support a range of health initiatives to help Canadians cope during the pandemic and to continue our fight against the virus with vaccine funding and development, testing, and treatment. The challenges brought on by this pandemic have caused great hardship for Canadian families with young children and brought unanticipated costs. So Bill C-14 proposes to provide immediate relief for low and middle income families with young children who are entitled to the Canada Child Benefit by providing up to $1,200 in 2021 for each child under the age of 6. Families that have a net income at or below $120,000 at or below $120,000 would receive 4 tax-free payments of $300. Families entitled to the CCB that have a net income above $120,000 would receive 4 tax-free payments of $150,000 for a total benefit of $600. This temporary assistance would directly benefit more than 1.5 million families and more than 2 million children at a time when many are still grappling with the financial impacts of the pandemic. And if I can speak personally for one moment, I am hearing so clearly from my neighbors, from my constituents who have young children, just how hard COVID is for them. And I know we all would love to give them this extra support. And as you all know, we can't get it to them until C-14 receives royal assent. Notre gouvernement s'emploie également à protéger.
Our government also intends to protect the future of students who have left school or who were not able to obtain an apprenticeship or summer jobs. Thanks to Bill C-14, we will eliminate the interests on the reimbursement of the federal portion of the Canada Student Loans and the Apprentice Loans Program for 2021 and 2022. This important measure will provide an assistance of $329.4 million. That is up to 1.4 million Canadians who are looking for a job or are in their first stages of an internship in their careers.
Formalizes an amendment to the Income Tax Act that will allow the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy to recognize rent payable as an eligible expense, provided certain conditions are met. As members of this committee will recall, the Canada Revenue Agency is currently administering the rent subsidy with rent payable as an eligible expense. This is because the businesses relying on this subsidy told us that that's what they needed. And all of us listened. Not all small businesses have the cash flow to pay their rent on the first of the month, with the reimbursement to come later. This bill ensures that those small businesses can get the support they need. And again, here, I'm sure we've all heard from small businesses in our ridings that really need that support. Additionally, Bill C-14 authorizes payments to Canada's 6 regional development agencies for the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. The government announced the $962 million fund on April 17th, then expanded it to $1.5 billion on October 2nd. As a next step, Bill C-14 proposes a further top-up to $2 billion for this fund. It helps support businesses which, for one reason or another, are unable to access other federal pandemic support programs. So the point I'm making here is really simple. The measures in C-14 are essential. Canadian families and Canadian businesses need this support to get through the crisis. Colleagues, today, let's set aside partisan sparring and work together to support the people all of us serve. I welcome vigorous debate, care, and study. Indeed, debate has been central to Canada's response to COVID-19 so far. Our government has received constructive input from all parties, very much including all the members of this committee. And I recognize the critical role parliamentary committees play in scrutinizing government legislation. I understand that the opposition's formal role is to oppose, and that delay forms part of the opposition toolkit in the Westminster parliamentary system. I get that. When I was first elected, I sat in the opposition benches, and I asked questions in committee of the member for Abbotsford, who now sits in this committee with us all, when he served as Trade Minister. That said, it is now time for us to move forward. Canadians need the concrete support this bill offers, and they need it urgently. At second reading, some of our colleagues on the opposition benches set partisan politics aside to do what is best for Canadians and supported this bill. I was frankly surprised that the Conservatives chose to do the opposite. And I was surprised that they did that even as they put forward an opposition day motion urging the government to support small business. So I say to my Conservative colleagues on this committee and in the House,
Minister,
you want me to wrap up?
no,
yes,
there's a
yes,
point of order first, Pat.
Yes, but she may have anticipated that. I would suggest that speaking of delay, that perhaps instead of going through the history of debate on the bill, if the minister would like to add substance about the bill, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, let's just go to the questions, please.
I think the minister is getting close to wrapping up. Minister.
Yeah, I sure am. And I spoke to the substance of the bill, the measures that are really important, personally important for me and for all of us. But it is really relevant to talk about how long it's taking to get this support to Canadians. So, le projet de loi C-14 vise à
The purpose of Bill C-14 is to provide relief to Canadians who need it during a difficult time, and that is without precedent. It should not be used as a political football.
Examinations expeditiously, and to join me in supporting the speedy passage of this essential legislation. Merci.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. We will go to a 6-minute round. The lineup will be Ed Fast first, Mr. Fast, followed by a split with Mr. Fragiskatis and Ms. Zerowitz, then Mr. St. Marie and Mr. Julian. Mr. Clerk, could you inform us when the bells start to ring? I don't know whether we hear them in this format or not. Okay, Mr. Fast, floor is yours, 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for appearing before committee. I just wanted to remind you, this committee work is not about delay, and it is not about politics. It was unfortunate that you launched into a political attack, just as you were claiming that this was not about politics. This committee's work is actually about scrutiny. It's about accountability and oversight. And our job is to do that. So let me get into the questions. Firstly, when are you going to be tabling a federal budget?
Madam Minister.
As I said in the House today, Mr. Fast, we have conducted extensive pre-budget consultations and had great input from Canadians. We will be tabling a budget in due course. And I would also point out the fall economic statement included
exactly 2 years since your predecessor tabled a federal budget. And that's 2 years that Canadians have been without a plan for our economy. That's the longest period in history that Canada has gone without a budget. Why?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Fast, I believe our country has been supported by a very strong plan throughout this unprecedented pandemic. Our government has said we will do whatever it takes to support Canadians and Canadian businesses, and we have done that. And thanks to the resilience and entrepreneurial spirit of Canadians, we are seeing the results. In the fourth quarter of this year, the Canadian economy grew by nearly 10%. That is better than what we saw from the US, the UK, Germany, France, Italy. Our economic measures are working, and we're going to continue the course.
Minister, I just remind you that in December, our economy lost 53,000 jobs. And then in January, we lost another 213,000 jobs. So somehow you're not getting the job done. But let me turn to part 7
Just
of Bill C-14.
Mr. Fast, I will have to interrupt you for a minute. The bells are ringing, I understand. So we do need unanimous consent to continue. What I'd suggest is if we could continue to 10 minutes before the vote. I do believe we'll have to go to the parliamentary Zoom. This is still a new system, and people have to be in front of their camera if there's a glitch in the system. So what I'd suggest is we go to 10 minutes before, suspend and come back, and hopefully the minister can get back with us and get to the hour.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to take up any more time than necessary here, but I think that's far more time than we need with the app. Could we not continue on through the entire period of the bells, allow each member, then maybe stop for a minute or two, vote. If any member of the committee has a problem with the vote that would necessitate their connection to raise a point of order on the vote, to have their vote count, then deal with that eventuality, but otherwise continue on with the meeting that way. Furthermore, if there's no unanimous consent for that position, or in either event, I'd just like the minister to maybe commit that we will have a full hour with her either way.
The minister is shaking her head yes, I believe.
Yeah, I am happy to commit to that.
Yeah. Okay, then I think we can we get unanimous consent to go to 10 minutes before the bell. It's one vote, and come back immediately following the vote. And the minister will be here with us for the hour. Agreed? Agreed. Okay, Mr. Fast, go ahead.
Hey, let me turn to part 7 of Bill C-14. That part effectively increases Canada's debt ceiling from $1.17 trillion to $1.83 trillion. Am I correct, Minister? Just yes or no? Minister?
Your question, yeah, no, I'm here. Sorry, Mr. Fast. Sorry, Ed, I was just turning off. I was just unmuting myself. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. So that was more than a yes or no question. And let me just say.
No. I just asked,
Yes.
are you
I'm
increasing the
afraid,
debt ceiling from 1.17 to 1.83? It's yes or no.
as I understand the rules, Mr. Fast, my answer can be the same length as your question. Is that correct?
That is correct. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So let me just say a quick point on the jobs numbers, because I think that is something that all of us are deeply concerned about. I sure am. And let me just say that today, 636,000 Canadians who had a job before COVID struck don't have a job. I think the most urgent priority of our government and this entire House needs to be to provide the economic support to get them
Mr.
back to
Chair?
work.
Back to Mr. Fast.
On the borrowing, okay.
Mr. Chair, she didn't answer the question. Yes or no? Is debt ceiling going up by $663 billion?
Delighted to answer that question, Mr. Fast. And yes, the limit that we are seeking with C14 is $1.831 trillion.
That figure is very exact. So you must know what it's going to be spent on, what you're going to use it for. Can you tell us exactly how that additional $663 billion will be deployed?
As you know very well, Mr. Fast, having served in cabinets, the borrowing authority increase is not the same as spending authority. What it does is set a ceiling for how much the government can spend. In terms of the composition of that number and how we got there, I would like to turn the attention of all committee members to page 141 and chart A2.3 in the fall economic statement. I can hold it up to show you guys the page. And that has a very specific breakdown of how we got to that number.
Mr. Fast.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Freeland didn't actually answer the question. I want her to explain to Canadians the $663 billion of additional borrowing that she is asking Parliament for. Where will it be allocated? How will it be spent? Don't point to a chart. Tell Canadians who are watching this, why should you receive effectively a blank check for $663 billion?
So,
Madam Minister, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Fast, I know that Canadians are really smart and really sophisticated, and I urge everyone who's listening to this to look at page 141, chart A2.3. How that borrowing authority amount is composed is laid out there very specifically. But I want to address something very precise here. The increase in the borrowing authority is in no way a blank check. Every single expenditure by the government needs to be authorized by Parliament. The borrowing authority sets a transparent and accountable maximum limit as to how much the government can borrow.
Mr. Vast.
And we know, Ms. Freeland, that in 2017, your government set a debt ceiling, which still left about $200 billion of room to spend. You spent all of that. Then the pandemic hit. You've spent beyond that because the support that you quite rightly provided to Canadians, and by the way, those items you articulated, we strongly support that support for Canadians. What we don't support is increasing the debt ceiling by $663 billion without knowing exactly what that borrowing will be used for. You're saying, I want a line of credit, $663 billion additional line of credit, but I'm not going to tell you exactly where I'm going to spend it. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to, again, explain to Canadians, where are you going to be spending that money? How will you spend it? When will you spend it? And are you going to spend all of it?
And if you could wrap that up in about 50 seconds, it would be great, Minister. We'll go to the next round.
Let me just say to Mr. Fast, I have far too much respect for him, and I really do have a lot of respect for him, to think that he really believes that the borrowing authority is in any way equivalent to a blank check or a line of credit. What the borrowing authority limit does is set a limit on the maximum amount a government may borrow. There is a quite separate process, which this committee is intimately involved in debating and authorizing the specific spending that the government undertakes. And I look forward to having that discussion with all of you. And again, for interested Canadians and committee members, look at chart A2.3 for the composition of how we got to that 1.8 number for the borrowing authority limit.
Thank you very much. Then turning to Mr. Fragaskatis for 3 minutes and Ms. Zerowitz for 3. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great to see you, Minister. Thank you for being here. I want to ask you a question about pandemic preparedness. It's great to see that C14 takes this seriously. As we know, and as we saw with COVID-19, pandemics can strike at any time, and I think we have to be on guard and on watch for future pandemics. I'm reading directly from the Fall Economic Statement where it says that $1.5 billion will be is proposed to procure PPE and provide warehousing, logistics support so PPE can be delivered quickly when needed, along with medical supplies to provinces and territories and Indigenous communities, as well as to ensure the readiness of the national emergency stockpile. Could you speak to the importance of that? Because I can't tell you the number of constituents who over the past year have asked what the government is doing to prepare for, heaven forbid, the next pandemic, and what we can do to further ensure that Canadians are safe in that regard.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, Mr. Fragaskatis, for that question. And I agree with you. I think that it is a very important one, and it is one that is very much on the minds of all Canadians. You have referred to PPE. That's an important element. Clearly, vaccines are another very important element. And let me speak to a third issue, which I think has become very clear to Canadians in the course of this pandemic, and that is biomanufacturing capacity here in Canada. We have fantastic researchers. We have fantastic life scientists in our amazing country. What we don't have enough of is the ability to actually manufacture the vaccines that they play a central role in developing. I'm thinking, for example, of Acuitas, amazing BC company that plays a key role in the development of and the production of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. So one of the things that our government is working on in close collaboration with provinces and territories across the country is stepping up our game, investing in biomanufacturing across the country, whether it is Vito Intervac in Saskatchewan, whether it is Medicago, whether it is the NRC. And I think that's an effort that all of us will agree is important and that we need to continue down that path.
It's great to see, and I'm especially interested in the consultations that Minister Champagne has been carrying out, which I understand wrap up tomorrow with the pharmaceutical sector to ensure that we have more of a domestic capacity, whether it's on PPE or vaccines. I think this is a lesson learned not just for Canada, but for all democracies. The domestic ability will be very important, but great to see in C14 this is being taken seriously. I'll yield my time or the remainder of my time, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Zerowitz.
Ms. Zerowitz, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to say thank you to the Minister for being here with us, and thank you for your leadership. My first question is regarding childcare. For far too long, Canadians, women have been calling for national childcare. And if we're looking to ensure full participation, or at least maximum participation of our women, and indeed any parent with children, we need access to affordable, accessible childcare. So how does C14 and the Fall Economic Statement address this issue, or at least, yes, C14 and the Fall Economic Statement address this issue? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zerowitz. Julie, great to see you. That is such an important question. And in my opening remarks, I spoke about the additional support that Bill C14 would give to families with young children. And I added a personal plea, not in my written remarks, because I have to say, my youngest child is now 11. And, it is it is challenging having children, even in elementary school in the pandemic. Virtual school is hard for kids. But my heart just goes out to all the young families in Canada with a child under 6. It is so, so hard. And I have had people, constituents, neighbors, just crying when they talk about how difficult it is. And as you know, Ms. Charowitz, one terrible consequence we've seen is women quitting their jobs, dropping out of the labor force because they just can't keep it all going. So Bill C-14 will give those families with the youngest children in our country a little bit of extra help. And as we said in the fall economic statement, we really believe that now is the moment for us as a country, after 50 years of talking about it, to finally put our shoulder to the wheel and to build universal early learning and childcare across Canada. And here, I do think all of us have to offer a chapeau, figuratively, to our colleagues from Quebec who have shown the way there. They have shown that affordable, high quality, universal childcare has a huge economic impact. Quebec has a much higher participation of women in the labor force than the rest of Canada, about 4% higher. There is a great economic benefit, not to mention it makes life so much easier for families with young children.
Okay, we are going to have to end that round there, and we'll go to Mr. St. Marie, and at the end of the 6 minutes, we will suspend for the vote. Mr. St. Marie.
Très bien, merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Easter. Good afternoon, Minister Freeland. I'm thrilled that you're here at the committee with us. First of all, a few comments. I'm very pleased to see that Bill C-14 is being examined by the committee today. Unless I'm mistaken, this is the first bill of an economic nature that is before the Finance Committee since the last election. We understand that there's urgency to act given the pandemic, but we've also seen that it was beneficial for everybody, that bills can be studied by the committee and to enable Parliament and the legislators to play their due role. C-14 implements a number of measures that were announced in the Economic Fall Statement. And in that Economic Fall Statement, some major expectations were put forward regarding the next budget. Among other things, you've mentioned the relief plan between 70 and 100 billion. But Madam Minister, I expect that a budget will be tabled during the last week of March when we're still sitting. If you were to listen to the media, that apparently is not the case. But could you confirm to us that your budget will not be presented in March? Thank you very much for that question. And thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie, for the hard work you do in all of these economic questions. I greatly appreciate these. Today, I do not wish to announce the date of the budget, but I want to reassure the committee that there will be a budget presented this spring. I agree with the members of the committee that it's important for our country. And I have discussed your ideas for the budget with you. And I would like to say to the members of the committee, that is the political, the financial parts of each party, that I'm absolutely prepared to listen to the ideas and proposals that you would like to put forward regarding the budget. I think this needs to be a budget for the entire country because the pandemic affects the entire country. Thank you for your response. This is greatly appreciated. And in fact, let's hope that it be a budget for all Canadians and not only one that allows you to go into an election campaign, with all due respect, Madam Minister. But in your economic statement in the fall, in your opening remarks, you remind us that when it comes to specific expenditures on COVID, 80% come from the federal government rather than from the provinces and municipalities. I would like to remind you that after all, this is a health crisis, a pandemic, and when you look at healthcare spending, 80% or close to 80% of the expenditures are picked up by the provinces. In my view, Ottawa is not doing its share. Since the last election, and even prior to that, the Bloc has been a spokesperson for that consensus in Quebec, and currently as well for all of the governments of provinces. We want to see an increase in the federal government's spending in health that is 35%. Are you considering implementing this measure? Thank you for that question, Mr. Sainte-Marie. Allow me to begin by explaining that with respect to the support to Canadians, to families and companies, the federal government was there to help all Quebecers and all Canadians. And we're pleased that we were in a position to do this and to ensure that the financial position of the federal government made this possible. But also allow me to emphasize that this summer we directly provided funding to the provinces and territories. There was $218 billion made available to the relief measures and another $2 billion for schools. So this relief has covered a great deal, has included rather a great deal of financing for health measures that the provinces and territories had to put in place to fight COVID. And let me add, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that thanks to Bill C-14, we're also considering providing more funding to the provinces. And there will be a measure to support them thanks to the CHSLDs, the long-term care facilities, because we understand that this is of great importance. There's something that I did discuss last Friday with the finance ministers of the provinces and territories, including, of course, the Minister of Finance of Quebec, Mr. Girard, that it is a great pleasure for me to thank him publicly for his collaboration, which is sincere and frank. He's an excellent colleague. We discussed what the federal government can do additionally to come to the assistance of the provinces and territories, more specifically when it comes to fighting COVID-19.
End it there. We are at the end of time for Gabriel, and we're also at 9 minutes.
Okay.
So we will suspend. I am told that you can be in two Zooms at once. I didn't know that. That you wouldn't
I didn't
have to
know that
recheck.
either, Wayne. I'm a little scared. My technical capacity might be stretched by that kind of effort.
We might try that, and it might work and it might not. So each in their own. So we'll suspend until following the vote, and the minister will have about 30 more minutes, 29 minutes with us. Okay, meeting suspended. We'll start off with, I don't see Mr. St. Marie in any event, but we'll start with you, Peter, 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Minister Freeland, for being here today. And we hope that you and your family continue to be safe and healthy during this pandemic. I want to start at the outset to say I think it is absolutely inappropriate that we've gone 2 years without a budget. In Canadian history, we have had massive crises, and we've never had a 2-year period without a budget. It's a question of accountability. And despite the fact that we're talking about the fall economic update and C14 today, the reality is C14 has areas where it doesn't respond at all to the needs of Canadians at this critical time during the pandemic. And I'll start off with an issue that I have raised with you, which is the issue of subsidies that have been given that permit abuses. Now, we raised this with your predecessor last spring, that if we're going to wage subsidies and supports for businesses, that we needed to put in place, as other countries did, to avoid abuses, things like dividend payments, executive bonuses, stock buybacks with government funds. And we have seen with government funds, a whole range of abuses taking place. Bell Canada, where they received $122 million and have laid off hundreds of workers, still paying dividends. Suncor laying off a couple thousand people. And here's a critical issue, and you referenced it in your opening remarks when you talked about $505 million for long-term care. Extendicare, Chartwell, and Sienna Living paid out collectively over $172 million in shareholder dividends, despite the fact that they were receiving massive and significant government subsidies. During this time and up until now, over 760 residents and workers have died in their facilities. Now, it is obvious, I think, to anyone that that money, instead of being paid out in dividends, should have gone to patient resident care and to support the safety of their workers. So my question is very simple. Do you agree that there was a major mistake made in not ensuring that abuses couldn't take place like this? And why wasn't this loophole closed in C14?
Can I go ahead, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Minister. Go ahead,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Julian, for raising all of those important issues. I'll start with the wage subsidy, but then if I have time, I'll say a couple of things about long-term care, if I may. So on the wage subsidy, I hear you and I hear your concerns. And it is important for companies to understand that legally the wage subsidy can only be used to pay employees. It can't be used for any other purposes, and any allegations of misuse should be reported to the CRA. There are penalties for misuse of the wage subsidy, an additional 25% penalty, and potentially imprisonment in cases of fraud. So it was important for us and is important for us to have that support out there, but we do take abuses seriously. The other thing I would say, though, about the wage subsidy is my priority at the end of the day is to keep as many Canadians working as possible. Our supports, and I would say the ingenuity and resilience of Canadians, means we are getting through this unprecedented global pandemic. But at the end of the day, there are still 636,000 Canadians who don't have a job today who had one before the virus hit. And so for that reason, our objective has been and continues to be to have in place the most comprehensive set of supports we can have to keep people working. And the wage subsidy is a really important program in that regard, because it keeps people connected to their job. And as you know very well, Mr. Julian, that is so important both for a person's sense of self-worth and dignity, but also if you become long-term unemployed, it is so much harder to get back into the workforce. So that's the rationale there. I could say more about long-term care, but I see you wanting to talk, and maybe I've run out of time.
We will have to go to Mr. Julian.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Julian.
Thank you very much. And so you talked about comprehensive supports. Now, here's another example. Part 2, student loans payments, despite the fact that the NDP steered through a motion that passed unanimously for a moratorium on all student loan payments, what we have is just a moratorium on interest. Students are struggling. People with disabilities are struggling. And these are situations that are well known to Canadians right across this country. The NDP has also proposed supports going immediately to people with disabilities far beyond the partial payment that was made this fall and that took 9 months to occur. So why doesn't C14, why didn't the fall economic statement ensure that there was a moratorium on all student loan payments and ensure that there were adequate supports in place for people with disabilities?
Madam Minister.
Yeah, Mr. Julian, I'm really glad that you raised students. And in my opening remarks, I singled out the importance of C14 in allowing us to provide more support for students. It is really, really important to me, and you're right to raise the issue. And what I would say to us collectively is we need to understand that the 3 groups that have been hardest hit when it comes to losing their jobs are youth, women, and low-wage workers, particularly racialized, and new Canadians. And we need to be sure that our support is targeted there.
Okay, thank you both. We'll go to 5-minute round first with Mr. Fast and then on to Mr. McLeod. Ed, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, earlier in this meeting, you referenced chart A23, and you suggested that it explained everything, explained spending, it would explain the borrowing, how much money was going to be allocated to a certain area. Well, in fact, Canadians, of course, can't see this chart. You and I can see the chart. And if you look at it, I think you'll agree with me that all this chart does is explain that the government is going to borrow another $663 billion. Would you agree with that assessment?
Minister.
No, Mr. Fast, I'm afraid that I would not. And let me just say a couple of things. Canadians can see this chart because it was published in the fall economic statement. It's available to anyone who would like to go online and look at the fall economic statement. And for wonkish people who are watching our deliberations, let me point you to page 141, and it's chart A2.3. And what this chart shows is how we got to the number of $1.831 trillion for the borrowing authority that we are seeking. It shows the composition of that. And I think that was important to show. And, people should refer to that. And I can go through the chart if people would like.
Minister, please, you have just confirmed what I've just said. This is all about how much the government is going to borrow. It says nothing about where it's going to spend that money. And that's why we need a budget. For 2 years, you've neglected to deliver a budget and an economic plan for the country that would outline what you expect in terms of tax revenues, what you expect in terms of debt servicing costs, what you expect in terms of spending, what programs you're going to spend on, what fiscal anchors you're going to put in place to make sure that this doesn't get out of control, economic growth projections. None of that is in this fall statement. And yet you're asking us to increase the borrowing limit by $663 billion without any idea of where you're actually going to spend that money.
Madam Minister.
Okay, Mr. Fast, there's a lot in there. And let me parse it and respond to the various points you've raised in the time allotted. So to your first point that the borrowing authority is quite different from a budget. You are 100% right, Mr. Fast, and that's a really important distinction. In seeking an increase of the borrowing authority, we are being extremely transparent, and we are saying this is the upper limit up to which the government may borrow. But we are not saying that the government will undertake those borrowings, nor are we saying anything about government spending. That's entirely separate. That happens through the Fall Economic Statement. That happens through Bill C-14 that we're debating today, and that will happen through the budget. And that's entirely right.
Well, Minister, please. Your government blew through its previous debt ceiling within a couple of years, way beyond it. In fact, you exempted certain spending for COVID relief, and that was appropriate, but you blew through it. Now you're suggesting Canadians, yes, but if you give me $663 billion, don't worry, I won't blow through that line of credit. Why should Canadians trust you with that?
Minister.
But Mr. Fast, you've answered your own question in your previous question. It's very important to make a clear distinction, as you did in your first question, between the borrowing authority and actual spending authorities. We are very, very clear on that distinction. Canadians should be clear on it too. And the only other thing I would say is when it comes to spending authorities, our government has been clear that we have believed during COVID it was important to do whatever it takes to support Canadians and Canadian businesses. We're open and transparent about that. I hope that all members of this committee will agree with that. Canadians need us to be there for them. That's why they need Bill C-14.
We'll need a quick, snappy question and a quick, snappy answer.
Well, I'll just make a comment. We fully support the support measures that are contained in C-14. What we do not support is Part 7, which dramatically increases Canada's debt ceiling without any oversight or accountability. You're simply saying, give me a blank check and then trust me. We just cannot do that, Minister. In fact, Minister, we are very disappointed that you wouldn't sever Part 7 from C-14. That would allow us to support Bill C-14 and all the good measures that you've contained in there.
We're going to have to end it there. Ed, has the Minister got a quick response, or are we on to the next witness?
Sure,
Minister?
I have a very quick response, Mr. Chair, which is simply to say, with really great respect for Mr. Fast, the characterization of the borrowing authority limit as a blank check is simply false. This is a transparent and open authorization of a level up to which the government may borrow. Spending authorizations are separate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Mr. McLeod, followed by in a 2-minute round by Mr. St. Marie. Mr. McLeod, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister for appearing in front of us and having open discussion on so many things over the last while. I represent the Northwest Territories. A year ago, we were very nervous. We didn't know what the outlook was. The pandemic was declared, and we spent a very difficult year trying to make sure everybody was looked after. We're now starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccines are being rolled out, and here in the north, it looks like we'll have everybody vaccinated by at least April. The combined work of the government of Northwest Territories and the government of Canada can only be described as a success in keeping the cases down and the death numbers low. And the low numbers in the north have allowed us to do more than what our southern neighbors were able to do. For us in the north, we're able to keep all our schools open. We allowed businesses to stay open. So I think for that, we should all give ourselves a collective pat on the back. And the government of Northwest Territories just announced fairly recently that of the $156 million that was spent in the Northwest Territories to address COVID, $123 million of that has been covered by the government of Canada. And that's the reason we were successful. The assistance that the territories received from the federal government is the major reason we were able to operate the way we are. Our economy is in varying degrees. We have some people that did well all through the pandemic and others that have struggled. And then there's some that are really in trouble. But back in June, the government of Canada increased the borrowing limit for all three territorial governments to ensure that they could continue to have the fiscal flexibility to manage the economic pressures caused by COVID. I'd like to ask if the minister could explain how Bill C-14 similarly seeks to make sure the government of Canada has the fiscal flexibility it will require.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. McLeod. Michael, as I call you in less formal settings, great to see you. And you prefaced your remarks by explaining to us a little bit about how things are going in the Northwest Territories and how people have handled COVID. And you suggested a collective pat on the back. And let me just say, speaking from the South, to you, Mr. McLeod, and to all the people of the Northwest Territories, I think all of us in the South should be patting all of you guys on the back. I think the way that the Northwest Territories have handled this global pandemic is really admirable, a real example for the rest of the country. And I would just like to say the approach that you guys have taken required a lot of sacrifice from individual people in the Northwest Territories. It required an acceptance of some real restrictions on travel outside the territories. And you guys are quite rightly reaping the benefits of that disciplined approach. And so I do collectively pat you all on the back. Bravo. You're also quite right. Did you want to respond, Mr. McLeod?
No, I was just going to say.
No, keep going.
Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I was just also going to say, Mr. McLeod, you're quite right that we have been working closely with the governments of the Northwest Territories, also the Yukon and Nunavut, and have increased their borrowing authority at the territorial level. They have put in important measures to fight COVID, and we've supported them in that. Part of Bill C-14, as we have been discussing, is an increase in the federal government's borrowing authority. We legislated, our government, that every 3 years we would publicly and transparently review our borrowing limit. That 3-year timeline is now up. And that's why we have now come to Parliament and come to this committee to say that we need to increase the borrowing authority limit so that the government does have the space to continue fighting COVID.
Okay, if you got a very quick question or point, Michael.
Yeah, okay. I just want to ask the minister, I think the minister is aware that, the different regions of the country are emerging from the pandemic at different rates. And I want to know how the government is giving the necessary resources to regional development agencies so they can meet the changing needs of local economies across this country.
Minister?
Yeah, another great question. And Bill C-14 does include an additional $206.7 million for the RDAs precisely to meet that need.
Okay, thank you. What we'll do, I know we'll soon be running out of time, so 2 minutes to Mr. St. Marie, 2 minutes to Mr. Julian, 4 to Mr. Falk, and 4 to Miss Kudrakis. Mr. St. Marie.
Oui, merci, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. Madam Minister, right now there is a debate among economists regarding the relief plans. If I were to characterize that, let's say on the one side you have Mr. Larry Summers, Olivier Blanchard, who are saying we have to be careful. We have to stop trying to stimulate the economy. There's the risk of an increase in inflation and interest rates. And on the other hand, and I'm simplifying, you've got Krugoff, Rogoff, who are saying, no, we need these relief measures in order to stimulate economic growth. We're not afraid, at the least in the short and medium term, any increases in interest rates or inflation. From your viewpoint, for the Canadian economy, where do you stand when it comes to fiscal policy and the relief measures plan? Excellent question, Mr. St. Marie. And I have discussed this question with Mr. Summers directly, as well as with Ms. Yellen, who is also involved in this debate. And if I may, I'd like to add another question to this, which I believe should be included in this debate. It's not only a matter of the level of government spending. It's also a matter of what these expenditures consist in. You're an economist, you know full well that an expenditure is an investment in the country's economic capacities. That's very different from an investment, or rather from spending that is not an investment in the economic capacities of a country. So we look at this from the viewpoint of spending for Canada. And from that perspective, I must say that one of the first questions we look at is whether or not these expenditures will add to the economic power of our country, of its abilities, and whether or not the spending will boost our ability to see economic growth. And by doing this, then we ask whether the spending will create jobs.
Thank you both. Mr. Julian, 2 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So page 126 of the Fall Economic Statement, Annex 1, forecasts significant cuts in program expenses starting the next fiscal year on April 1st. Now, the other countries have looked to address the issue of pandemic spending by putting in place wealth taxes, by increasing the corporate tax. We've seen those announcements. And yet, in the Fall Economic Statement, there was no measure that puts in place a wealth tax, addresses the endemic pandemic profiteering that we are seeing. And we know that Canadians are going through misery in so many cases and actually need investments that will continue on through the next fiscal year. So I'm perplexed by this approach. We have other countries doing it, putting in place wealth taxes, excess profit taxes, also looking to address overseas tax havens and raising the corporate tax rate. In the Fall Economic Statement, C14, there's no reference to that in any meaningful way. So my question is very simple. Are you looking in the budget to change direction so that those investments can be put into place? And in doing so, will you heed the call that so many people have raised across the country for tax fairness, ensuring that the immense profiteering we've seen during this pandemic is actually addressed with the billionaires and the banks that have received so much in profit and so much an increase in wealth actually having to pay their fair share?
Minister.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Mr. Julian, and I'm going to offer two responses. The first is to say that when it comes to our thinking about the budget, our overarching priority is jobs and growth. More than 600,000 Canadians who had a job before the pandemic don't have one today. That's a tragedy for each person. It's a tragedy for their families. And, you know, I wake up in the morning and I think about how can we get those jobs back? And the answer, in my view, is economic growth. So that is our overarching priority. When it comes to taxation, I would disagree with you in characterizing the measures announced in the Fall Economic Statement as being not weighty. Actually levying a tax on the international digital giants, which we will do, and where there is real momentum at the OECD to get this done. The Biden administration has really created an opportunity to get this done at the multilateral level. That is huge. That is transformative for the international tax framework. And that is something our government is very, very involved in. And just finally, because I see our chair moving around in his seat a little bit, let me just say, when it comes to overseas tax havens and to tax avoidance, there I agree with you very much. I think at a time when so many Canadians have suffered, we have to have zero tolerance for tax avoidance, for tax evasion, and our government is committed to that and to strengthening those rules.
Okay, thank you both. We'll go to Mr. for 4 minutes, and Ms. Katrakis is allowed to close it.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. I asked the minister my question during QP, so I'm going to cede my time to Mr. Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'll probably give Tamara a chance too. But I've got a question that I want to ask right now. Are businesses that opened in March of 2020, are they eligible for the highly affected sectors credit availability program?
If what you're getting at, Mr. Kelly, is the question of newly formed businesses and newly formed businesses not being able to get access to all government programs, you're quite right that they're not. And there has been a real effort to strike a balance between having integrity of programs, not creating incentives for people to create vehicles to receive government support, and supporting businesses. But let me say, I just real quick, this is substantive here. I really believe we do need to support newly created businesses, not only with HASCAP, but with the rent subsidy,
Thank you.
with wage support. And I would like you guys to help me do that.
Yeah, I appreciate your candor. That was the first time that any minister in this government has actually given a straight answer to that question that's been asked repeatedly since last spring. So thank you, Minister, for your candor. And with that, I will let Ms. Jansen ask her question.
Ms. Jansen, you got a fair bit of time. You get 3 minutes.
Thank you. Ms. Freeland, Canadian women entrepreneurs want to know why you waited till Monday to announce a special panel to deal with this disastrous SHE session. Did you actually delay until International Women's Day so you could make a big announcement?
Can I start answering?
Yes.
I never know whether I need to wait for you to call on me. Ms. Jansen, I'm very glad to have you mention the creation of our task force on women in the economy. We are going to have our first meeting this week, and I am really looking forward to it. And I'm glad to hear you talk about the SHE session. Women are one of the groups who have been the hardest hit by this COVID recession, and we're committed to supporting them.
You're saying that you have not had a single meeting yet, and this has been going on for months and months. Now, that just blows my mind. These women, and I'm thinking especially of independent travel advisors, I've been meeting with them constantly, are barely hanging on, and they're desperate for a concrete plan. They need people to be allowed to travel again. So under what conditions will you finally open the border, when Canadians are 50% vaccinated?
Madam Minister.
So there are a bunch of questions jammed in together there. And let me just say that absolutely, I have been holding many, many, many meetings and conversations with women entrepreneurs, with women economists, and our government is putting support for women at the center of our economic policy and our fight against COVID. Now, when it comes to the border and to travel, our priority is and needs to be protecting the health and safety of Canadians. And that is what we are doing right now. And if other parties disagree with that, then I think it's important for other parties to be open with Canadians that that's their position.
The question then is under what conditions will you finally open the border, when we're 75% vaccinated?
Madam Minister.
Canada's border policy is guided by science. And Canadian borders will be reopened when it is safe for them to be fully reopened. That's the reality. And I do also want to say, when it comes to the border, that particularly with the Canada-US border, a real success, and this speaks to Canada and the US working together.
I'm really short on time. I'm wondering,
non-essential travel.
I'm very short on time.
Hold on, Ms. Jansen. We'll let the minister finish, and we'll give you the time. Minister, finish.
A very important success that we should all note has been to limit non-essential travel, but to allow trade to continue.
So, Madam Minister, one more question. Do you even have a list of criteria prepared, or are you just going to wing it like all the other pandemic response measures so far?
Minister.
Thank you. Ms. Jansen, our response to the pandemic has been to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to support Canadian families, Canadian jobs, and Canadian workers. When it comes to health measures, we take those in close consultation with scientists and working very closely with our provincial and territorial partners. And the border is an issue we have discussed at great length with our provincial and territorial partners. We're acting together.
Thank you both. Ms. Koutrakis, 4 minutes to wrap it up.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci.
Thank you, Chair and Madam Minister. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Especially thank you for your devotion and your leadership during this very difficult time. In my community, affordable housing, and more specifically for vulnerable populations like women who are victims of spousal violence, is an extremely important concern. For us, I'm proud to note that a number of organizations have received support as part of the Quick Housing initiatives. Could you explain to us why it is that a new funding of $1 billion as part of the Quick Housing Initiative was required in the fall economic statement? And perhaps share your thoughts with us as to the state of affordable housing and the additional possible funding. Thank you, Ms. Petrakis, for your devotion, for your hard work, and for this very important question. And I completely agree with you that at Mimi, but as well as throughout Canada, we have always seen women, violence against women committed, domestic violence. But with the lockdown and with the crisis, there has been a tragic increase in this violence. The lockdown was and continues to be especially dangerous for women and young people. And it is for this reason that it was very important for our government to invest, to come to the assistance of these women, to provide them with a refuge, a safe place for them. That is very important, and I'm very proud of the work that we have begun. But Ms. Petrakis, I completely concur with you. That is, we must continue with this work that is so vital and necessary, because everybody has made sacrifices during lockdown, but that there were people who were put directly in danger due to the lockdown, and we have the duty to come to their assistance. You already noted and explained to the members of our committee that you have many meetings with women's organizations. Could you explain to us to what extent a sound action plan for women in the economy would strengthen the economy as a whole? Once again, an excellent question. Well, one important point we need to note is that the economic crisis that we're going through today differs from previous economic crises we've seen. It isn't the same economic crisis that, for instance, we experienced in 2008. This crisis has especially affected women and young people and low-wage earners. And for that reason, it would be important to provide an adequate economic response, and that is at the measure that is consistent with this economic crisis. And for that reason, it is important for us to have a stimulus plan, an economic plan that targets women, young people, and low-wage earners. Thank you very much.
Thank
One
you
more
both.
sentence. Do you have 30 seconds?
You do, quickly.
Okay, so very quickly, just to add, Madame Koutrakis, j'ajouterais que...
I would add this. If we don't include women in the economy, it is not possible for us to see true economic growth. By helping women, we will create economic growth for everybody.
Okay, thank you both, and thank you, Minister, for taking the extra time to give the committee an hour, and with the complications of the vote. I mean, we even had a good discussion on guitars and pianos in the in the waiting zone there.
Don't forget the bagpipes.
And the bagpipes. So on behalf of the committee, I'd certainly like to thank you for appearing before the committee. We no doubt will see you again. You have received the pre-budget consultation report that we've sent in. So we wish you luck in establishing your priorities as we move as quickly as possible to a budget. So with that, thank you very much. And we'll release you and turn to officials. Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, parliamentary colleagues. I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have to suspend to go to the officials? Okay, officials are here, and I'll quickly go through the list so we know who's here, if I can find them. So we have an hour with officials. We have from the Department of Employment and Social Developments, Atka Raman, Assistant Deputy Minister, Stephen Cote, Executive Director. From the Department of Finance, we have, if you could just raise your hand so they know who you are, Maud Lavoie, Director General, Dave Boland, Director General Legislation, Trevor McGowan, Senior Director, Leslie Taylor, Senior Director, Nicholas Moreau, Director General. With the Department of Health, we have Edward D'Souza, Acting Chief Financial Officer, Jocelyn Voisin, Associate Deputy Minister, Monique Friesen, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, and Greg Loist, Director General Policy Regulatory Strategies. And from the Department of Western Economic Diversification, we have Barbara Motsney, Assistant DM. So, okay, that's
Point
the
of
officials.
order.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I just want to address how we conclude this meeting. We're behind schedule because of the votes, and we had planned an hour for officials and an hour to hopefully complete the PMB for Larry. And some of our officials, I think, are actually here for both. So I wonder how we might proceed on this. And we could maybe ask or have officials be prepared to take questions on either bill, and at the conclusion of an hour, I would at that point ask if we could then go to clause by clause on Mr. McGuire's bill. So I maybe put that out there and let you respond to that, Mr. Chair, how we might accomplish both of these things today in this meeting.
Okay, it is. We can take an hour with officials and still have a half an hour left for the Bill CO8, or we could go 45 minutes with officials and give us 45 minutes or thereabout with the on CO8. They are there is one official the same, Trevor McGowan. Is from the Department of Finance, is the same in both panels, but Sean Porter, who will be here for the CO8, is a different one for that. So I do think we'll have to deal with C14 first and take 45 minutes and see where we're at, and then go from there. Okay. And is there any anyone has any remarks to start? I wasn't told there was, or do we just go directly to questions? Sorry, Gabriel St. Marie, you had your hand up. You got a question?
Oui, Peter était.
Yes, Peter was before me, so I'll see it over to him and he can take the floor after.
His hand, I don't see his hand up now.
I had put it down, Mr. Chair. Mr. Saint-Marie is kind. I was going to raise a point, but I think you dealt with it. With due respect to Mr. Kelly, I don't think we can. They're two separate things, right? We're here to hear officials on.
Mr. Saint-Marie.
Yeah.
Oui, merci.
Thank you, Wayne. I would like to thank all of the officials, all the senior officials, and the employees for joining us today. Personally speaking, I would have a lot of questions regarding C208, and I have very few questions regarding Bill C14. So what I would suggest is that we continue asking our questions regarding C14 until 5:30, And then 5:30 to 6:30, as had been planned, we can ask questions regarding C208 alongside the other representatives. Thank you.
Okay, we're trying to find a compromise here. Let's start with questions on C14 first. There's a lot of officials here, and I know they've been waiting quite a while. So we'll start with Mr. Fast. What I'll do is cut the questions down to 4 minutes, so we can get more people in, and we'll go to about 6:40 my time. That's 5:40 Ottawa. Mr. Fast, 4 minutes.
Well, actually, I had my hand up also on that same point of order.
Oh, okay.
Mr. St. Maria just made a suggestion on how these two bills should be handled, and I'm not sure where you actually landed on this, Mr. Chair.
I think if we gave a half an hour to this discussion on C14, that'll put us at about 5:40 Ottawa time. That will give us about 30 and 20, 50 minutes for C208.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're on, Mr. Fast, for 4 minutes, then followed by Mr. Fraser.
All right. To the officials, you were present when I asked questions of the minister about the chart, chart A23, which basically sets out the borrowing capacity that is being asked for in Bill C14. Can you give me any further insight, line of sight, into how this borrowing would be deployed? When I look at the chart, I'm seeing about $323 billion of effectively unallocated money that at some point in time, we're going to have a clear idea of where it's going to be deployed or spent. There's the $100 billion stimulus piece. That's the only piece that actually has any indicator as to where it will be spent, and we have no clarity on that either. So I'd be interested to hear from our officials exactly how will that borrowing capacity be deployed, because it's expected to all be used up over the next 2 to 3 years. Am I understanding that correctly?
Who wants to take that? I can't see everybody on my screen, so somebody just, Nicholas, Ms. Moreau, Mr. Moreau.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can take this one. So basically, when you look at the chart as it has been presented by our minister earlier, this represents the borrowing needs of the Government of Canada, but also the Crown Corporation. Okay. To that number, we add basically the $100 billion that you referred to for the stimulus package. And we also add a 5% buffer just to take into consideration the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding fiscal projection. But to your question specifically on how this money will be deployed, I think I need to refer you to the budget. In the budget, basically, we do present the expected spending and revenue for the next 3 years. That has been used in order to build that figure. So in terms of details, I think the best reference will be the budget text, but also the basically the corporate plan that has been put in place by the different Crown Corporation in Canada.
Well, thank you for that explanation. And you've just touched on what the hot button issue here is, and that is the budget. You've referenced the budget. The budget and the spending authorities really should come as one package. But in this case, the borrowing authority has been separated out. It's like putting the cart before the horse. We have a budget that's supposedly coming, but it hasn't come for 2 years. Yet the government wants us to trust it, that it's going to use that borrowing authority wisely. And we have no track record or reason to actually trust them. So again, I'm wondering, why is it that the budget still hasn't been tabled? And yet even you as finance officials are linking the borrowing in C14 to what might come in the budget. I'm puzzled, unless I misunderstand this.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I can take this one again. Basically, I should have been clear. this is based on the fiscal forecast that have been presented in the fall economic statement of 2020. If you recall, in this document, we did show fiscal projection for the medium term, and based on these figures, this is how we've been able to basically forecast what will be the expected financial requirement and the expected debt limit that we want to set for the government.
But a fiscal forecast is not a budget, correct?
Fiscal forecast is based on forecast of revenue and spending based on already. To your point, a fall economic statement is not a budget. You're right.
Okay. Can I ask, has your department...
Last question, Ed.
Sure, thank you. Has your department been asked to consider what fiscal anchors might be deployed to make sure that in the long run, the finances of our nation are sustainable going forward and don't become a huge burden on future generations? And if so, if you can just briefly mention what those fiscal anchors might be.
Mr. Moreau, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, at this time, I think the priority, as mentioned by our minister, is really to take and look at the COVID situation. I'm not working in the department that is in charge of looking at fiscal anchor or any other target that we have for our debt. On this question, I don't have an answer, sadly. Sorry.
Really? Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
Just to be clear here, the Borrowing Authority Act and the budget are those separate pieces, correct?
Yes, I agree, but they are inextricably linked and should be done in context. And quite frankly, what we need is a budget to let us know why that borrowing authority is required in the first place.
Okay, then we do agree. On Mr. Fraser, 4 minutes roughly, and then Mr.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question really stems from the minister's comments on the Canada Child Benefit, which is going to see $1,200 extra flow to certain families who are below the $120,000 income threshold, and additional supports for families that maybe not be quite that generous who earn more. But nevertheless qualify. I'm curious, this additional money to families, how quickly will it be able to flow once this bill receives royal assent?
Who wants to take that? You'll have to yell because I cannot see everybody on my screen. Ms. Taylor, do I see you? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I can try that one. So thank you for the question. I think one thing that's important to recognize, and the minister touched on this, is that royal assent to the legislation is a prerequisite for these payments to flow. The rationale for that being that this is obviously creating a new draw on the consolidated revenues of the government, and a prior legislative basis for making those payments needs to be established. The Canada Revenue Agency is responsible for administering these payments. They will be looking to get them out as soon as they can, but they do have to take into account the other obligations they have in terms of delivering other payments to Canadians. What I do understand is that essentially they will make best efforts to get the payment out within a few weeks of the royal assent date, likely towards the end of the month. And then subsequent payments would flow as per the legislation in April, in July, and in October of 2021.
Excellent. Look, thank you very much. I think it's encouraging to hear that once this passes, support could flow to families within a matter of weeks. That's really remarkable. Thank you. There's certain amendments to the Canada Emergency Response Benefit that are included in this legislation. My understanding is that because the initial program was authorized to issue payments during the previous calendar year, there are some people who are entitled to benefits that can't receive them quite now. Can you confirm that that's the case and explain how this bill will actually allow money to flow to CERB recipients who are entitled to certain benefits?
Sure. Yeah, I can take that one.
Go ahead, Mr. Cote.
Yeah. So as you just stated, the Public Health Events of National Concern Act provided authority up until the end of the year, December 31st, to pay for those that applied for CERB benefits. This bill amendment will allow the authority to continue until March 31st to allow those payments to be made.
Excellent. And how many CERB recipients are we talking about here who currently can't access funding they may be entitled to?
So the majority of CERB recipients have received their payments. There's a number of recipients who require additional verification, who still are are being processed, and those are the ones that would ideally be paid for this once the authority is put in place.
Do you know how many people are currently going through the verification process?
I don't have the exact number. CRA would have to be there to confirm that.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any time remaining, Mr.
You got
Chair?
one more minute.
Sure, I'll go down my list and pick one of the many questions I've got left. I'll just want to discuss the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. Over the course of this pandemic, many of the government's emergency programs have changed to reflect changing circumstances in the economy or the length of time that the pandemic has continued for. Certain changes included expansions of the Canada Emergency Business Account. Is it the case that this bill would expand the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund for businesses that may not have qualified for CEBA so they can have equivalent support through the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund? And once this bill passes, will that support be ready to flow to businesses that may need these supports?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Fraser. Absolutely. The regional development agencies have received some 31,000 applications for $2.95 billion since the beginning of the program, and it's still coming in strongly. We get about 480 applications a week for about a total of $46 million a week. So there's absolutely continuing demand. What this program was introduced as a backstop for other COVID relief programs. And so as CEBA evolved to go from 40,000 to 60,000, so will the funding in this bill allow the RRF to mirror that program change. So we will continue to be a backstop for the other COVID relief programs.
And will the money from this bill be able to flow immediately upon its adoption?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, we have a lot of applications in-house. We're currently processing them. And as soon as the money is available, I assure you it will flow. We've helped some 19,000 businesses across the country with $1.4 billion so far out the door, and definitely have applications and approvals ready to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Mr. St. Marie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Easter. First of all of you who are here today, I'd like to sincerely thank you for the amazing work that you have been doing in this extraordinary time. It's been a year today, and you haven't simply sat back. It's made a great deal of difference, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. My question is for the Department of Finance, perhaps Mr. Moreau, or if not, you'll direct me to the colleague who can answer the question best. In the fall economic statement, the government announced that they would establish a reimbursement for expenditures in renovation that are eco-friendly. It's been almost 4 months now. Will this program be available before the next budget, or has its implementation been deferred to be connected to the budget?
Who's on? Do I see any takers? Anybody from the Department of Finance want to give that in a row?
Bonjour, c'est Maud Lavoie du ministère.
Yes, from the Department of Finance, Maud Lavoie. I'd just like to indicate that the officials who are online right now are not the officials who worked on this program, so we'll have to come back to you with an answer on that issue. Well, thank you, Ms. Lavoie, for this answer. And certainly, if we could perhaps find out when this program will be available, if we could obtain that in writing, that would be greatly appreciated. My second question also has to do with the fall economic statement, and it might be the same answer that I will receive. There is an organization in my riding which is called the Association of Visually Disabled Persons of the Lanaudière area. My question is equitable access to libraries. That's on page 104 in the French language version of the Economic Fall Statement. And according to this graph, assistance will go from 4 billion during the first year to 0. So gradually 3,210 in 2024-25. They're very worried about this. So how do you explain this decision? Thank you. Unfortunately, once again, the right person are not online right now, the ones that could answer your question. Thank you once again, and I'll stop here for my questions so that we can look at 208 more quickly. Thank you.
I do know, and I don't believe she's still on there. Elizabeth May had one question, but I believe she's gone. Okay, go to Mr. Julian.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to join my voice to those of my colleagues by thanking you very much for your service during this pandemic. And we certainly hope that you and your families continue to be healthy and well during this pandemic. I have a few questions. And Mr. Chair, it's possible that I take either less or more time depending on the answers I receive. So I hope that you'll be flexible in the next few minutes.
I wanted to start off by following up on the minister's comments around the emergency wage subsidy program, and that improper use such as dividend payments, stock buybacks, and executive bonuses is something that is not tolerated. So I would like to know a couple of things on that. First off, do we have an indication from the Ministry of Finance what the rate of non-compliance is? How is that? How are those cases of non-compliance generated? Is it complaint-based, or is it something that is investigated? For example, when there are articles such as we found in the Financial Post, where there were dozens of companies cited that have paid out dividends and received massive amounts of subsidies at the same time. So and then what is the process, whether the complaint is from the outside or is something that is flagged internally? Do you contact the company? Do you issue a notice? Are you investigating? Or is there an attempt at prosecution? So that's my global question, is what are you doing in response to these widespread complaints about a improper use of wage subsidy and other government programs by very profitable Canadian corporations?
Is anybody available? Mr. McGowan, do I see you?
Thank you for the question. The administration of the wage subsidy and investigation and compliance related to it is the responsibility of the Canada Revenue Agency, and the Department of Finance works on policy, preparing legislation, and the design and implementation of the wage subsidy and other income tax matters. But it's the Canada Revenue Agency that handles the investigation and would have compliance statistics. One thing that perhaps it would be a good idea to clarify is that the wage subsidy itself is based upon a reimbursement model. And so when an employer pays an employee wages, they get a certain percent of that, assuming they qualify, back under the wage subsidy program. And so by the time an applicant for the wage subsidy receives their refundable tax credit, so the amount of the subsidy, they've already paid the wages to which it relates. And so that's sort of the relationship between the wage subsidy itself and the payment of wages. So because it comes afterwards, there isn't that same question about whether or not a wage subsidy received will be spent on wages in the future. But in terms of the general compliance, for example, in case people are making fraudulent claims, those statistics would, and the responsibility for enforcing that would lie with the Canada Revenue Agency.
So they do not share any information with you? You're not aware of any issues around non-compliance?
I don't have those at my fingertips right now. I don't know if my colleague Maud has that with us. I simply don't have it with me, as it was not directly relating to the amendments in C14.
Oh, okay. Could you provide those figures to us? If there are internal figures, I would be surprised that CRA is not sharing them with the Ministry of Finance. That would be a normal practice. So, could you share those figures with the committee?
I think Ms. Lavoie, did you want in?
Oh, simply to say that to confirm that it's also not data that I have in my possession, and we would need to go back to you, Mr. Julian, as to whether or not we can provide that data. As Mr. McGowan was saying, this data would reside with the Canada Revenue Agency.
Okay, very last question, Peter.
So the issue around tax evasion, there are, I guess, the question with the fall economic update, what modeling did the government use to support the assertion that measures to combat international tax evasion and abuse would result in $1.4 billion in revenue recovery over the next 5 years? And can you share that modeling forecast with us?
Ms. Lavoie?
Yeah, this is not a question that directly relates to the bills. Unfortunately, this is not information that those on the line have, and so we'll also need to get back to you on that question.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will move on to, we'll let a split 8 minutes between Mr. Kelly and Ms. Zerowitz. Mr. Kelly.
All right, I'll just ask actually, I'm going to yield my time to Ms. Jansen. She's got some questions I know she wants to ask.
Ms. Jansen.
Okay, I think these are for the finance officials here. The Business Council of Canada has said that the pandemic ignited an explosion in public spending and debt. Federal debt to GDP ratio was 30% before COVID and is now over 50%. And they're clear that what we need to, is an economic growth strategy rather than a stimulus strategy. Now, since we were told by the finance minister that the stimulus package was preloaded, that's why we spent so much more than the rest of our G7 partners. Are we going to be growth focused going forward?
I will turn to officials, but if it's a policy decision of the government, officials can't answer that. They can answer on things that are in C14, but if it's a policy position of the government, we can't expect officials to answer to that. And I think that's one. Go to your next question, Ms. Jensen.
Okay, so where is the relief for the failing sectors? How is it possible that we're 1 year in and we still haven't supported the air sector?
Does somebody want to take that? That is a policy decision as well. I think the minister has said they are working on that. But does anybody have any idea on the discussions with the airline sectors that they can table? I see Mr. Marot shaking his head. Okay, we'll go to a third one, Ms. Jansen.
Oh, sorry, I cede my time.
Okay. Do you have any you want to ask Mr. Falk? A single question there. Well, I'll come back to you if you want to think about it.
Well, I am ready. I've got a couple of questions. I'll
go ahead, Pat.
Jump in with. Sorry about this, but my question is to officials from WD that we have here. The RRRF program, are enterprises that opened and commenced operation in last March, are they eligible for this program?
Ms. Motsney.
Yes, yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
You'll have to tell me how to pronounce your name.
No, that's absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for the question. This is the RRF is a liquidity-based program, so it's based on your operating needs. The funding allocation is decided based on your operating deficit. When the program was launched, companies that came into operation after March wouldn't have had an operating deficit upon which to base funding. So they're in a way they're not eligible, but it wouldn't really be the right tool to support
so the answer
them.
is no.
That's correct.
All right. then is there any official that could, we had the answer from the minister, which was surprising, a surprising admission given the how many times the question had been asked previously. But is there anything out there contemplated? I understand these are political decisions for the minister, but do any of the departmental officials that we are here, can they give us any light onto or any sense of what a business that spent perhaps all of 2019 building a plant, building a restaurant, building a premises, draining all of their capital with, say, a March 1st, 2020 opening date, is there any aid measure available or program that has criteria that a business like that could apply for?
Anybody want to take that one? I would throw in here, I'd give an example, and I think all of us on the Finance Committee and maybe most members have had this same concern. New businesses that don't qualify, as Pat said, going back considerable time developing the business, they don't qualify. I had one this week or 2 weeks ago that the exact same business, son and dad, incorporated in December 2019, and they don't qualify because now they're their new business number. So those are concerns that we're all getting as members of Parliament. So I would ask officials to think about them. Anything else there, Pat? I don't see.
No, I'm happy to move on and go to the next speaker so that we can get to 208. But that's an important consideration for officials that advise our policymakers.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Zerowitz, 4 minutes and we'll wrap it up.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the officials for being here today. Thanks so much for your dedication and your hard work through this unprecedented time, which we all hope will be over sometime soon. I have 2 sets of questions. The first is around the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy. The businesses in my riding of Davenport, and I'm sure right across this country, was super happy when they could apply for the rent subsidy directly to the government. So the 2 questions I have is, one, if I understand correctly, if C14 is to pass, the rent subsidy would become an eligible expense. Does that mean that a business can apply for the money, for the rent money, in advance of actually having to pay the rent money? So that's my question 1. And my second part is, I believe that under SECRA, the first version of the rent subsidy, there were 140,000 small businesses that received the first version of the rent subsidy. Can you give me an idea about how many small businesses actually receive this rent subsidy now?
Who is up for that one? Go ahead. I hear someone. Trevor?
Thank you for the question. I'll let my colleague, Maud Lavoie, discuss the statistics on the uptake for the rent subsidy. But you're absolutely correct. The rent subsidy currently, that is before the application of Bill C-14, requires an amount to have been paid, and then the subsidy is based upon rent that has been paid, similar to the earlier discussion of the wage subsidy. What the measure in Bill C-14 would do is allow an applicant for the rent subsidy to obtain the rent subsidy based on an amount that has become due, but that has not yet become, or that has not yet been paid. There is, of course, a requirement that the amount actually be paid, but it would help cash flow for business applicants for the rent subsidy by allowing them to make their rent subsidy applications based on an amount due, obtain the subsidy, and then use that to pay at least a portion of their rent.
Thank you for that.
Ms. Lavoie, did you have anything you want to add?
Yes, regarding your question on the number of applications for the Canada Emergency Rate Subsidy, so the rent subsidy, according to the CRA website, so far they have approved 470,000 applications for this program. Of course, some of those businesses may have applied for more than one period of the program. In terms of unique applicants, that's 134,000.
34. Okay, thank you so much. My next question is about mental health and supports for that. I believe that there are some additional mental health supports and funding within Bill C-14. So if it was passed, can someone outline the key mental health supports that would flow if it were passed?
Who's on? And that'll be the last question. Anybody can take that?
Hi there, it's Jo Voisin here from Health Canada.
Ms. Voisin.
Yeah, so there is funding in C-14 to support mental health. So there's funding to flow to Wellness Together Canada, which is an online portal that provides 24/7 support for Canadians' mental health, so text, phone, and confidential video chat in both official languages and over 200 dialects. So that there's that part of the support, and then there's also support for the Public Health Agency of Canada for substance abuse and harm reduction prevention programming. So those two initiatives are supported through this bill.
Thank you.
Okay, we will have to end it there and go to Bill C-208 based on previous agreement. I do want to sincerely thank officials. I know they've been took a lot of their time this afternoon for probably only 40 minutes of questions. But I do think Mr. St. Marie said it right. We do thank you from the bottom of our heart for your efforts. You know, when we look back a year ago from now, when the calls were set up at night, there was always officials on those calls as programs were rolling out for the government to roll out a program and admit we're going to have to fix it as we go. And you were the folks trying to fix it and make the changes. And every members of all parties had the opportunity to question you folks well into the night on those calls. So I want to sincerely thank you for what you've done for the country over the last year, and thank you for your efforts going forward. So with that, we will release all the witnesses except Mr. McGowan, and I believe Mr. Porter is here now as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now go to Bill C-208, Mr. McGuire's bill on an act to amend the income tax transfer of small business or family farmer fishing corporation. And we have from yeah.
If I may, and I'm really sorry to interrupt you again. Just for clarity, the notice of this meeting did not include clause by clause the clause by clause vote on the bill. It was our understanding that this was the reason that we swapped our schedule so that we could actually dispense with this bill and complete it today. If a motion is required to add that, I will move that now. That following, you know, I don't know what time frame we want to put on it. I would like to have questions with officials, but at the same time, I think it's critical that we actually complete this bill's committee. Complete our committee responsibilities for this bill today. So if you could give us the plan for the next 45 minutes, and if that requires a motion, I'll make the motion.
Okay, and I do see Mr. St. Marie on this. Just to answer Pat's question first, Gabriel, I do think we certainly need to hear from officials if there's if their points show that there should be amendments made to this bill, and it's the will of the committee that we should see amendments, then we probably wouldn't go to clause by clause today. But if it's not seen that there is needed amendments, we would go to clause by clause today. I have the form here to know how we, in what order we vote.
Okay, so how will we
so
determine...
let's go about, could we go about could we hear from the witnesses first, raise some questions, and leave 15 minutes at the end and deal with your motion then?
Yep.
Gabriel, you okay with that? Okay. All right. Mr. McGowan or Mr. Porter, I don't know who's on deck to say a few words.
Mr. Chair, it's Mr. Porter. I'll start if
that's
if
great.
That's fine. Our plan was that I would spend a few minutes providing a little bit in the way of opening remarks and context setting around C208, and then I would turn it over to Trevor to provide a little bit more detail in the form of examples to help illustrate the key points that we'd like to make today. Does that work for the committee?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So just a handful of observations. I know the committee has heard from a number of witnesses and is pretty familiar with the content, the purpose, and the policy underlying C208. But to level set, it's obviously intended to facilitate intergenerational transfers of a business that are otherwise caught by a surplus stripping rule under the existing tax system. So what is surplus stripping is an important context setting question. Surplus stripping occurs when an individual shareholder reaches into a corporation to access its surplus in a manner that produces a capital gain at the personal level rather than a dividend. And the normative expectation is that a corporation would earn income that forms part of surplus and distributed to the individual shareholder as a dividend. When steps are taken to achieve that kind of result, not in the context of a sale of those shares to an arm's length person, then this Rule 84.1, which you're all becoming quite familiar with, steps in to characterize that capital gain as a dividend. So that's the starting contextual point, kind of the foundational principle. Building on that just a little bit, the rule applies to corporate surplus that is accessed by a parent through a corporation owned by a child. And the reason that's the result is that the parent and the child are related for purposes of the tax rules, and for purposes of this surplus stripping rule are essentially treated as the same economic unit. There has been no disposition of shares to an arm's length person in that context. Corporate surplus has merely been accessed by the individual shareholders. The tax system doesn't care who they are, if they're related or not dealing at arm's length. So that's important context as well, the parent and the child, because this is the point where we're taken to where surplus stripping bumps up against an intergenerational transfer, which is the point underlying C208. We know and accept that in some cases, it could be more attractive to sell the shares of a business corporation to an arm's length person than to a child, in the expectation that the sale of those shares to an arm's length person would produce a capital gain, whereas there were circumstances in which the sale to a child would produce a dividend. Trevor will get into the differentials in a little bit more detail, but again, to context that, those dividends are likely going to be taxed in the mid to high 40% range, and a capital gain in the mid to high 20s. So there's around a 20 percentage point delta as it relates to realizing corporate surplus in the form of a capital gain in the hands of an individual rather than a dividend. That's a fairly significant benefit, and needless to say, one that is sought after in the context of ordinary course tax planning. So the key point that we wanted to bring to the committee's attention as it relates to your deliberations around C208 is that if the decision to accept from the surplus stripping rule a genuine intergenerational transfer, say on neutrality grounds, neutrality in terms of it producing the same result as a sale to an arm's length person. I'm not going to comment on that policy point at the moment, but if that decision were taken, then one needs to be mindful of the boundaries that are established between what constitutes surplus stripping and what constitutes a real intergenerational transfer of a business. In other words, we wouldn't want to make an amendment to the Act that would open the system up to vulnerability in the form of a parent being able to access corporate surplus through a corporation owned by a child if that was not in the context of a real or genuine intergenerational transfer of a business. And the hallmarks for assessing whether there's been a real, genuine intergenerational transfer of business, one would look to the terms and conditions that would be reached between arm's length parties in the context of a sale of a business. And to what extent do those terms and conditions exist as between any transaction that might be undertaken between a parent and a corporation owned by a child. So that's the legislative challenge, is in how to delineate in legislative language those boundaries so that the real intergenerational transfer situation could be protected, but at the same time, the system isn't opened up such that it becomes vulnerable to relatively more aggressive or abusive forms of tax planning. And the final point that I would make before I turn it over to Trevor is just to remind the committee that this issue only arises when the shares of a small business corporation or a business corporation generally are sold by a parent to a corporation owned by a child. There are no impediments under the tax system to an intergenerational transfer of a business carried on in unincorporated form, whether a sole proprietorship or a partnership. And indeed, there are no impediments under the tax rules to the sale of shares of a business corporation to a child in circumstances where the child does not seek to use the corporate surplus of the acquired company to finance the acquisition itself. That's where the rub occurs. It's the accessing of the corporate surplus to finance the acquisition by the child that arises at this awkward intersection point between surplus stripping and a transaction that looks like a genuine intergenerational transfer of a business. And so with that, I know we'll have ample opportunity for questions, but I would turn it over to you now, Trevor, for slightly more detailed walkthrough of some illustrations and some examples to help highlight that critical point around establishing the boundary.
Trevor, Mr. McGowan.
Thank you. I'd like to go through building upon what my colleague Sean has already said about the context of the anti-surplus stripping rules in 84.1, the intended purpose of the proposed amendment in Bill C-208, and then discuss how it would apply. You're looking at the specific legislative proposal. So, skipping ahead to clause 2, and I will I'll mention clause 1 a little bit later, but clause 2 is the one that really deals with intergenerational transfers. It applies where a parent transfers shares of a corporation to a corporation controlled by their child or grandchild, and it's fairly simple in the trigger for that relief to be provided. And when it applies, it deems the purchaser corporation to not be dealing at arm's length, which effectively turns off the anti-avoidance rule in section 84.1. And the difficulty or some of the challenge with the measure in the bill is how precisely targeted it is to get at what you'd think of as a real intergenerational transfer of a business. Because of course, it deals, as I said, with the transfer of shares of a corporation owned by a parent to a corporation controlled by the child. It does not intrinsically deal with a real transfer of the business that is being carried on. And so that level of abstraction from the actual business where a parent wants to hand it over to their child or to their grandchild so they can carry it on, keep it going, continue building it, and continue running the business, is not directly provided in the bill due to this abstraction, just looking at transfers of shares going from one to another. And so it's that lack of precise targeting that I think we wanted to highlight as being a concern with the measure. I could provide a bit more details on that. In particular, the rule doesn't require the child after the transfer to be involved in the business in any way. It doesn't require the parent to cease to be involved in the business after the transfer of the shares. And in fact, the parent could simply wind up the business right after the transfer. There is a requirement that the purchaser corporation that gets the transfer shares has to be legally controlled by the child at the time of transfer. And legally controlled is generally defined for tax purposes to mean that the child could elect a majority of the board of directors. But it does not prevent the purchaser corporation from being factually controlled by the parent. Likewise, it doesn't provide that the child will have necessarily any economic exposure to the shares being transferred. And in fact, it does not require the child to retain ownership of the transferred corporation or of the purchaser corporation after the transfer. And so the requirement that shares be transferred to a purchaser corporation controlled at the time of transfer by the parent is somewhat abstract, but I think it's worth noting the points of departure between that and what you'd normally consider to be a real transfer of a business to a child. Now, why do these matter? They matter because while it is generally described as facilitating an intergenerational transfer in certain cases that Sean set out, basically a transfer of shares to a corporation owned by the child or controlled by the child at least, it would also open the door to facilitate tax planning, generally for high net worth individuals. Sean was mentioning the tax rate differential between capital gains and dividends and this anti-surplus stripping rule. That's at the heart of it. In particular, as Sean said, for a top marginal rate individual in Ontario, that might be the difference between around a 47% tax rate on dividends going down to a 26 or so percent tax rate on capital gains. Likewise, if the parent is able to access the lifetime capital gains exemption, as they would with some fairly simple planning, it could drive their tax rate down to zero. So they would effectively be able to extract retained earnings from the corporation they control, continue controlling the corporation, continue running the business. The child need not necessarily have any involvement in the business after the transfer. And to the extent their lifetime capital gains exemption is available, their tax would go from, again, for top rate Ontario resident, just to use as an example, 47% down to nil. But even in circumstances where lifetime capital gains exemption is not available, say either because it's already been used up or because the corporation that carries on the business has more than 15 million of taxable capital, as I understand, a component of the rules would provide a grind to prevent lifetime capital gains exemption being accessed for larger companies. In those cases, you'd still have a rate delta, as Sean said, of around 20 percentage points. So that is obviously going to be the most valuable for high net worth individuals who are subject to the top marginal tax rates, and for individuals who want to extract a sizable amount of money from their corporation such that the tax savings would be enough to more than offset the transaction fees of putting these kinds of complex arrangements into place. I'd be happy to walk the committee through exactly how these transactions can be structured. The gist of it is that the parent has shares of the corporation, transfers them to a child of or a company owned by the child in exchange for a promissory note. The parent's company pays the child's company an intercorporate dividend, which of course is tax-free, and that dividend is then used to repay the promissory note that was used to purchase the shares. And so in that way, the money gets out of the corporation, you have a capital gain. If the anti-avoidance rules in 84.1 don't apply, and the individual is able to, instead of paying dividend rates, pay the much lower capital gains rates or nil if the lifetime capital gains exemption is applied. So that hopefully gives a bit of a flavor about how the slight disconnect in the rules where they look at the legal form of a transfer of shares by a parent to a company owned by their child, how there's that bit of a factual disconnect between that and the real bricks and mortar transfer of an actual business to their child that the child continues to carry on. And I'd mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch on Clause 1, as it is sort of different than Clause 2. Clause 2 relates to intergenerational transfers and provides an exception for the anti-surplus stripping rule in Section 84.1. Clause 1 doesn't really relate to intergenerational transfers of a business. Rather, it relates to a different anti-avoidance rule, but it relates to siblings. And just like for an individual, moving from a dividend rate down to a capital gains rate means a tax savings. For corporations, transfers between corporations, if they can essentially transmogrify or change a capital gain into a dividend, well, intercorporate dividends are generally not subject to tax, and so they're able to avoid tax in that way. And so that's what's called capital gain stripping generally, and Section 55 is an anti-avoidance rule intended to prevent that. There are a couple important exceptions. One of them is that if you have a corporate reorganization within between related parties, then you can move amounts around between your corporations, and as long as it's sort of all in the same group, there won't be any negative tax consequences. And so what this measure would do is that it would treat siblings as being in it would allow siblings to escape the application of the anti-avoidance rule in Section 55, and as a result, essentially be allowed to transfer, one sibling would be allowed to transfer their stake in a business to their other sibling without triggering this anti-avoidance rule that could result in capital gains treatment. So it would provide a tax deferral on that sort of transfer between siblings. Again, it's not intergenerational and is thematically different, which is why I did it out of order. But hopefully that provides a bit more of a flavor of what Clause 1 does. So that, I think, provides a bit of an overview of the bill and some of the observations that we as the department have made about its technical operation. I think Sean and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, we'll go to questions. I'm not sure who's up first on the Conservative side. Who wants to go first? Or I go to Pat. Are you? Just let me ask you this question, Mr. McGowan, myself first. We are at the. I know the committee is wanting to move with this bill today. I think that's pretty likely. It's the third time that this bill has come forward in Parliament from three different members over the years, starting with the Liberals, the NDP, and now the Conservatives. Basically the same bill. How difficult is it to fix? Can it be fixed? what kind of amendments are required in order to cover off what you folks believe is a concern. And if it was carried here today, the only amendments that can happen in the House, as I understand it, at report stage is something that requires a royal rec or a Ways and Means motion by a minister. So could it be fixed at that stage if the committee was to carry it as is today?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. I, of course, can't speak to the government's intentions, about what fixes it might wish to do or anything like that. I can point to the fact that these sorts of addressing this sort of intergenerational transfer is in the Minister of Finance's mandate letter, and it is something that we as department officials are looking at. And in terms of the whatever fixes would be needed, I would just go back to my earlier comments and say that the kind of fundamental issue that we've identified is this disconnect that I was trying to describe between a real transfer of a business as people would ordinarily understand it, where a parent carries on a business for one reason or another. They want to transfer it to their children or their grandchildren, and the next generation starts to carry on that business. And so it's that kind of fundamental disconnect between that sort of factual situation on the one hand, and on the other hand, the approach of this measure looking solely to a transfer of shares from one individual to a corporation owned by their child without really connecting the legal form with the real underlying story behind it. And so it's that, it is certainly something that we believe can be addressed. But in terms of this bill, hopefully I've gone through and provided enough of an overview of kind of the fundamental issues with it. I don't know if Sean had anything to add to that, but I think that's about as much as I could think to share.
Okay, I will go to Sean. Did you have anything you want to add? And then I'll go to Mr. Kelly, Mr. Fragiskatis, Mr. St. Marie, and Mr. Julian, and it'll be one question each.
Just a quick point to Mr. Chair to emphasize the complexities that Trevor and I have been speaking to around the boundary, and to your question around the extent of amendments. Surplus stripping is a challenge for governments generally. There's a lot of case law on the point. It's a very difficult delineation to make at the best of times. And so I would only observe that one would want to be careful in making amendments to a surplus stripping regime that would provide a roadmap for taxpayers to shoehorn their way into that exception and out of the regime. And so it's really just a further sounding of caution around how important it is to get that boundary right. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't see your hand up there, Ed, Mr. Fast. Did you something were you on a point? Okay, we'll go to Mr. Kelly then for a question.
Just only a really brief comment, and I'll give the time to Mr. Fragiskatis if he's got questions. I only want to say that the points that were raised are important ones. They are ones that were anticipated and ones that I think we had pretty good testimony from other experts to indicate on Tuesday that these are issues that can be dealt with within the bill as it is, and I just urge members to support it.
Okay, Mr. Fragiskatis.
Thank you, Chair. To the officials, whichever one wanted to take it. The other day, as you might know, we had witnesses speak to this very issue. A number included tax experts. One is Kevin Wark from CALU, the Canadian Association of Life Underwriters. And I asked Mr. Wark on what seems to be a gap in the bill, which I think Mr. McGowan just spoke to briefly a few minutes ago. That is the lack of requirement in the bill for the parent to cease to be involved after the transfer. And this is what Mr. Wark put back to me when I asked him his thoughts on that. And I quote here from the meeting the other day, Mr. Chair. We engaged an outside consultant who was involved in consulting primarily on arm's length transactions of private businesses. He indicated that in the majority of those situations, the selling owner was obligated to continue in the business because of the transfer of information and relationships. To differentiate that from a family transfer doesn't seem to make sense. It would make more sense for the business owner to have some role to play longer term to ensure the business continues to be successful. Our argument is that they should not necessarily control the business after the transfer, but they should continue to be able to play a significant role. Maybe it's Mr. McGowan, I'm not sure, but any thoughts on that perspective? Is that a reasonable rebuttal that was offered in response to this concern about the lack of requirement that I'm talking about?
Thank you for that question, and it's a good one, and is a good illustration of a point that Sean was making earlier, that these are hard lines to draw and have to be done with careful thought and being mindful of real business transactions and what really happens when a business is transferred. So it's finding the right balance. And as Mr. Wark said in his comments, it would be somewhat extreme of a rule to say, no, when you have a transfer, you have to shutter the doors and the parent's not allowed in the building anymore as of the date of transfer. That of course goes pretty far, but at the same time, you have at the other end of the extreme some of the provisions like the ones we've been discussing today that have no requirement that the parent cease or restrict in any way their involvement in the business, and in fact have no requirement that the child have any involvement in the business or that there be any sort of transfer between the two. And so part of the hard work that we're thinking about, consistent with the Minister of Finance's mandate letter, is the balancing of these kinds of practical considerations so that you can have a real intergenerational transfer that reflects what actually goes on. So it is a fair point that in many cases it's not a hard break where at the date of transfer the keys are given, like when you buy a house and the parent's no longer involved at all and the child just completely takes over. But it does make sense for there to be some overlap, but and that is something that I think a set of rules would need to think about. But on the other extreme, it seems that when you have an intergenerational transfer of a business, some diminution in the role of the parent, coupled with the child actually taking over the business, is an integral part of that. And that really is a lot of the difficulty in coming up with a nuanced and complete set of rules to deal with it.
Thank you very much.
I'll have to go to Mr. St. Marie and then Mr. Julian. Mr. St. Marie.
Oui, merci, Monsieur Easter.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. So here we have a very important bill before us. Since I've been elected, I've dealt with many family companies, agricultural, others who are seeing tragedies. Many are experiencing tragedies with serious implications. We've heard our witnesses. They all told us that this needs to go forward. It makes no sense at all. So when I understand that it's a complicated issue regarding the laws and all of the points these gentlemen have raised, these have to be accounted for, of course. But I certainly don't want us to use those arguments then to say it's also complicated to simply not act. This is an urgent measure. It needs to be adopted. As far as I'm concerned, as written, 208 settles this. And after that, certainly we could look at the Hansard, we can look at committee debates to better understand the spirit of the law. It's been repeated often that we don't want it to be used for people to avoid taxes. It's there to assist intergenerational transfer of companies. So as to the regulations that the government can then enforce, can specify this. And if ever there are issues, we can fix them afterwards. But I think we really need to go forward. So my question is this. Eric Girard, the Minister of Finance, and he appeared at the Chamber of Commerce in Joliet. Joliet didn't understand why this has not been done in Ottawa, whereas it's been done in Quebec City. You're working on this, gentlemen. You've been able to look at what has happened in Quebec. So where are the problems? Where is the problem with Quebec? Why are you so afraid for us to go forward? Why are you so afraid of this bill? Thank you.
Who wants to take it, Mr. Porter or Mr. McGowan? Mr. McGowan.
Thank you for the question. I think certainly the intergenerational transfer rules in Quebec, as well as precedents in the United States and elsewhere, have informed our thinking on the matter. And it is, as I said, important, an important topic, sufficiently important, of course, to have made it in the Minister of Finance's mandate letter. You'd asked about the specific concerns and raised tax planning and whether or not it could be dealt with later. I would simply note that the amendment as provided in the bill would facilitate more often high net worth individuals to extract or to pay out retained earnings from the corporation, possibly using the lifetime intercorporate or lifetime capital gains exemption to avoid or reduce taxes, either going from, to use the Ontario rates that we talked about earlier, 47% down to 26% roughly, or down to zero where the lifetime capital gains exemption applies. This kind of surplus stripping is very widespread, I would say, within the tax planning community. It's fairly common to try to convert dividends into lower tax capital gains. And it would seem reasonable to expect that to not only continue, but to be accelerated and emboldened with the kinds of amendments that, or the kind of planning that could be utilized through some of the measures in this bill. So, you'd asked what kind of the concerns were on a tax avoidance side of things, and I think that's about it. I don't want to get into too many technical details. I alluded to them earlier, but using some tweaks on existing techniques, it is very possible for just through a few transactions to eventually change, say you were going to extract $100,000 from your business, you wanted that money out, you normally pay around $47,000 or $48,000 of tax on it, to have your child set up a corporation, transfer the shares to the child.
Just hold on, Mr. McGowan. I have a point of order.
I'm really sorry, Mr. Chair, and to officials, but time marches on. We were a little bit over what we agreed to for now on the time for officials. So I just asking you to be aware of the time. And
I know we're a little over, but I'd like to give Mr. Julian the chance for a question. At least that's one from each party if he wants to take it. Mr. Julian, did you want a question? If we could be fairly quick.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. My question to the witnesses are: what kind of modeling have they done? The Ministry of Finance has obviously come up against this bill a number of times. I'm a little dismayed that we don't have amendments that could be offered. Fair enough. There's some speculation that it may open up some broader aspects that allow some wealthier individuals to take advantage of it. But what is the modeling internally to the Ministry of Finance? What kind of fact-based evaluation of this bill have you made, and what difference do you see in terms of people claiming the amounts? So I'm looking at modeling. I'm looking at actual figures. Anything that you bring to this discussion?
Mr. Porter?
I was going to let Trevor deal with that one. And so Trevor, while I defer that to you, the one thing, Mr. Julian, that I would point out around the modeling, because we have been looking at it, as you say, for a while, for the reasons that Trevor has given. This delineation question is at the heart of it. There's a significant risk of revenue erosion if this exception to the surplus stripping rule is too wide. And so we've had some conversation about it. You've heard from Mr. Wark that he's just touching on the design features, the notion of how long a parent could remain involved in a business transferred to a child. There's that element. There's the element of whether they can own shares and the nature of those shares and the extent to which the children need to be involved in the business, and delineating what looks like a real intergenerational transfer is very difficult. And if that isn't done properly, then yes, we are saying that there is a significant risk of revenue erosion, which runs to your question about modeling. But Trevor, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, that's great, Sean. I would only point out and apologize if I ran long a bit earlier, and mindful of time, that these planning techniques, we work with the Canada Revenue Agency. We understand the prevalence of surplus stripping transactions. We've looked at that, and also we have done our internal analysis as well as to what planning techniques that currently exist out there could be modified in order to facilitate tax avoidance through these proposals. So we've done the due diligence that way, and in addition to Sean's comments about thoughts on how to appropriately balance the different interests involved.
Okay, with that, we will go to clause by clause. I would say to the witnesses, thank you very much for providing the information. If this doesn't carry, well, we'll deal with that. If it does carry, I would suggest that someone needs to look at to make sure that there's amendments made that protect genuine transfers and doesn't open up tax planning in a way that creates some problems. So there's always that opportunity, as suggested earlier, either by a Ways and Means motion from a minister or a royal rec at when we report it to the House. So there's always options. So on clause 1, shall clause 1 carry on division?
On division, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Shall clause 2 carry on division?
On division. Wait.
Shall the title carry on division? On division?
On division.
Shall the bill carry?
Yes.
On division?
On division.
Okay. Shall the chair report the bill to the House?
Yes.
Agreed. And shall the committee order reprint of the bill? It's not amended, so we don't need that one.
Mr. Chair, the legislative clerk speaking.
Yep.
You don't need a reprint since there's no amendment.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. With that, then that concludes our discussion on CO8. And Mr. Clerk, we're within our time frame, so we're not disrupting another committee. So thank everyone.
Right.
And thank you again, the witness. Thank you, Mr.
Congratulations, everyone.
McGowan. I know that's a tough subject. All right. Thanks, committee. Meeting adjourned.
Bye.